going to be making two phone holders, both with a concrete base, but I'm going to add dye to one of them to make it darker, and then finish them both off with either oak or walnut attached to hold the phone. Firstly, to make the concrete mould, I started off with this melamine board which had bits cut off from all over it, but that doesn't matter. After marking it up, I started cutting down the board into the mould parts on the table saw. Here I used just a little bit of CE glue to hold the parts in place while I drove a few screws in to secure it. I then added silicone to all of the edges of the mould. It doesn't matter about being too precise doing this as you clean it up after, which I'm going to do now. Taking the cake fondant tool, I ran it around the edges to create a perfect round over and separate the waste silicone. I picked this technique up off of Mike from Industrial Maker's channel. Then, after the silicone is solidified, you can remove all the excess. So I'm going to be using a GFRC concrete mix, which has glass fibre in the back coat of the mixture to add structure. Although I'm not sure if a concrete project this small really needs any reinforcement, I included it anyway. I separated a small amount of concrete mix for the face coats, then split that in two and added black pigment to one half. This mix also requires polymer and superplasticizer. I'll leave a link to the recipe I used in the description. Most people spray the face coat of GFRC, but as I don't have the equipment, I experimented with the thickness of the face coat and made the lighter concrete a thicker mix, which I think worked better in the end. I then mixed the glass fibre into the back coat by hand and packed it into the moulds. This doesn't need pigment adding, as it won't be seen. While the concrete cured, I moved on to the wood and started by sanding the oak and walnut boards through my thicknesser. And after they were the correct thickness, I took them over to the table saw and started cutting them down into the parts. To cut the angles on such small pieces, I added a sacrificial piece of MDF onto my sled and glued down some stops in certain places to make sure I cut all the pieces the same. When making the internal cut on the smaller piece, I had to set my blade at an angle and cut the piece while it was vertical, before setting my blade back to 90 degrees and clearing out the rest of the wood. After a lot of hand sanding, I was going to use my router to take the edges off and add some small chamfers, but the pieces were just too small, and as I don't have a router table, I decided to just sand the chamfers in by hand. Carefully demoulded the concrete and decided to sand it down to remove any imperfections, although this did reveal a lot more air bubbles that weren't visible before. In hindsight, I should have only sanded the bottom, although I don't think the air bubbles look too bad, as the rustic base of this project contrasts well with the beauty in the finished hardwood. I picked up some concrete hardener and sealer online. I don't know whether it makes a big difference to the finished piece, but I thought I may as well try it. Then came the difficult decision of choosing which concrete base to have with which wood. I went against my initial thoughts and chose to put the lighter grey concrete with the walnut and the darker grey concrete with the oak. The final step was to secure the pieces in place with 2-part epoxy and also adhere some little silicone feet onto the bottom. I love how these phone holders came out, and I can't wait to experiment more with GFRC concrete. Let me know which one you prefer in the comments.